Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Mystic Therapy Podcast. In this episode, we're going to be discussing perception and perspective and how the two connect and relate, and it transforms everything that you perceive into reality. And what your reality is all just a perceived perspective of what's coming from your input. Everything that you perceive is light projected onto objects, and those objects get transferred into your memory, into your brain system, and it gets rattled around in there, and then you perceive and you project your perspective on everything that is your reality and how that is reality in essence. And how I would say the easiest way to connect those two would be saying that there's a table in front of you, right? You know that there is an object in front of you because the light projects off of it, and then the atoms and everything there that are creating that table, that's creating that matter in front of you. You see it, you know it's there, but you can perceive it, and you're like, okay, there's a solid object here, or quote unquote, there's an object here, there's a bunch of atoms here, there's a bunch of molecules making up this matter that's in front of you. And then you connect to your memory bank of information that you've already received or you are receiving, and you put your perspective on it. So you perceive that there's a solid object in front of you, such as a table, but you don't know it's a table until you take your perspective, calculate into your memory bank, into your brain, and you go, oh, I've been told that this is a table, this is the word for table, so therefore there is a table in front of me. So everything in your reality is just a perspective. It's all coming from your point of view. And that point of view isn't wrong, isn't right. It's just how you perceive things. And whenever you take all that information into account and you go, okay, there's this object in front of me. I've been told it's a table. I process it. I know I can look at information internally and externally. You can go and research it and be like, okay, this is what a table is, this is what's in front of me, so therefore it's a table. There are many different levels of this within the reality that we are all in, and there are multitudes of explanations on why that this is a table, this is why we call it a table, but then also because you perceive it as a table, you're going to call it a table. And in the different realms of reality, there's multiple ways of perceiving different things, and so therefore, even if someone else says that, hey, why are you calling this table a table when it's not a table? It's like, it's because you're grouped into a mindset and you're thinking of a table. To move on from that, so whenever you look at someone, there's light reflecting off of them, there's a being in front of you, so you perceive that there is something in front of you. And until you take your perspective and you project it onto them, you don't know that they're there. That's why there's many instances of, if you're driving down the road and you're just driving, and you're focusing on the road in front of you, you're perceiving a road, you're driving and you're going forward, and then all of a sudden someone comes from your right or your left and cuts you off. You don't perceive that person because you don't have that perception of them. So whenever they cut you off, then out of nowhere, you see the light project off their car, off that being, off that person that's in that car, and you go, oh man, there's a car there, it cut me off. And then boom, you throw your perspective on it and you go, well, I should be angry, I should be calm, I should be this or that. But it's just that it's, they're a being, they've cut you off, and you didn't perceive them yet. And then because you're focusing on your point of view, your point of reference, your reality. So that's all that is. It's you're focusing on your point of view, and you have your own perspective and you're looking from things from a lens that are coming from your third eye, from your initial starting point. Everything is reflecting in and out, as within, as without, as above, so below. Everything is happening from your point of view. You are a divine being with your own point of view. Thinking about others' point of view only creates havoc within your own point of view. So if you're going down the road and someone cuts you off, then you perceive that you need to be angry, you need to be calm, you need to be happy, you need to be this or that. But that's coming from your point of view. You don't know what that other point of view is doing. You don't know if it's there to make you be more aware of your surroundings, or if that point of view is in a hurry, if that point of view wasn't perceiving you. So everything is going to be your own perspective and point of view. That's the egotistical, that's the human form, that's the body that you're in. And then there are many different levels to that, and whenever you tap into higher realms of possibilities and spiritual realms, then you start realizing that this is a temporary point of view from a source that is an infinite point of view. So there are levels and dimensions that go up and up and up, and there are levels and dimensions that go down and down and down. So if you perceive something, then don't dismiss it and be like, oh, it's not there, it's not real. Because even if you believe in extraterrestrials, spirits, deities, different levels of dimensions, just because if you talk to someone else whose point of view isn't directly connected to your point of view and they don't perceive it, doesn't mean it's not there. So when you see someone and you talk to them and you go, hey man, I had this crazy experience, I witnessed beings from other dimensions come into my point of view, to my perception, my perspective. It comes in, they talk to me. I had this crazy experience to where I was one with them, they were one with me, we were telepathically connecting, there were no words. So how do you put those into words when you talk about it later on without being dismissed, or without people going, oh, you're crazy, you've had a hallucination, you're having a psychotic episode, this and that. Their point of view and their perspective doesn't involve perceiving that. They haven't connected to different sources, and they haven't done the inner work, done the outer work, like created a temple or vessel, whatever you want to call it, that can perceive that. So their reality isn't that. So whenever you try to communicate with someone who haven't had those like situations, haven't had those experiences, then it becomes difficult to put into words, because they don't know how to perceive it. They don't know how to go from their perspective and go, okay, like, oh yeah, I've had something like that happen before. I've tapped into those spirit worlds. I've tapped into those realms, those dimensions, whatever you want to call them. If they've never tapped into those, then they will not know how to communicate with you without calling you crazy. And in this realm, so few people have tapped into those, or have been taught how to tap into those, that a lot of it's been dismissed as hallucinations, as woo woo, as crazy psychotic episodes. But psychology literally is the study, the ology of the psyche, the mind, the psychology. So whenever they say you're having a psychosis or this or that, that's from a scientific 3D realm based experience perspective, and that's from their perspective, and they're not perceiving that. They've been taught how to perceive textbooks of science, when your energy, your being, your vessel, it doesn't resonate with you from a scientific point of view if you've had these direct contacts with these beings, with these experiences. So when you perceive something as such, it's easy to dismiss them. It's easy to go, oh, I was going through something, it was traumatic, like my brain made it up, this or that, or if anything like external is introduced into your system, such as psychedelics, which literally means psyche, which is the mind, and then delic means to open, so you open your mind. So a mind opening substance literally opens your mind up to these other dimensions and these other worlds and these spirit realms, and you open your mind up to these things. And if you're talking to someone, or if you're in a group of people that have not opened up their mind yet, who haven't tapped into those special like cortexes and those glands in your brain yet, they have no idea what you're talking about. They can't perceive it because it's not a part of their life yet, or it's not a part of their journey. We're all on different journeys, we're all on different levels, but we're all a part of the same source energy. So that main upper source perspective and perception, whenever you connect with that, there's a direct link between you and that now. And it's hard to come back from that once you have that experience. Once you have an eye, mind opening experience, when that third eye is activated, that gland, that pineal gland is activated, like once it's activated and you perceive everything from that point of view, it's hard to go back into a three-dimensional lower dimension and a lower frequency, whatever you want to call it. Whenever you go back down, because you're leaving your body, you're leaving your perspective, you're entering into different energetic states, different dimensions, different realms. And whenever you connect to those different realms, you have a new perspective on life. You have a new perceived notion of what is around you because you've opened your mind up. You've activated your mind. You've done the work. You've taken those plant medicines. Those spirits have came to you. They've activated different parts of your brain. There's multiple studies out there that you can look up from a scientific point of view. If you really want to look into the science, there's multiple studies where it says parts of your brains get deactivated, other parts of your brains get activated, parts of your brains become hyperactivated, all of your brain gets activated. There are studies where they say that you don't use your full brain at all times. There's so many different alternate routes that you can perceive to connect to your perception and make that perception a reality. So however you want to go about it, whether you believe taking these plant medicines is a hallucination based on evidence, or these plant medicines are opening up your mind to different realms, there's information for that. So there's the dualistic now, like the dualistic reality that we're in. There is polarization. There is good, there is bad, there is right, there is left, there's up, there's down. So there's information one side, there's information for the other side. So that's something that you need to remember when you come back down from those higher dimensions and those higher perspectives. You need to realize that we're here having a point of view, a perspective from this reality, from this body, from this vessel, from this temple, from whatever you want to call it. These meat suits, quote unquote, from a lot of people that are in the woo-woo community. So these meat suits that we're in, it's the same theory as, well, I won't say it's a, well, I won't go into that, sorry. So whenever you have these higher perceptions and these perspectives, whenever you come back down, whenever you come back up, whichever which way you go, if you're working through the darkness, then you're going to be going down. If you're working through the light, you're going to be going up. There's different levels, dimensions, up and down. Most people have to travel down to work through all their trauma before they can go up. The light is found in the dark. So there's the duality of that. The light and the dark, there's the both sides. The down is the dark, the up is the light. So when it comes to different perspectives, if you've had a crazy experience, if you've had an out-of-body experience, a near-death experience, if you've had a lucid dream, all these things are completely real. All these things are based in reality. There's information for all these different things. There's communities that you can communicate with to find these studies, these scientific research. It's all there. It's just based on your reality and what you're ready to perceive. So if you're ready to perceive lucid dreaming as a real out-of-body experience that happens every night or happens once a month, once a year, if you're ready to perceive that dreams are just alternate realities that you're tapping into while you're in a meditative deep sleep, then it's there for you. Everything is there for you. There's confirmation bias for anything. So whether it's good, bad, however you perceive it is how it's going to translate into your reality. So for me, I started years ago diving deep into all these things, and I started to realize that the cat down the road, quote unquote, from another guy, so the person down the road, the cat down the road, they're perceiving reality different from what I'm perceiving reality, but we're in the same reality. It's just different scenes to a greater movie, or whatever you want to say. Like, how can I put it this more? Uh, so every movie that's ever existed is happening within each and every single one of us. So just because I've never seen a werewolf, a vampire, a Bigfoot, any of those like sci-fi type things, doesn't mean the cat down the road hasn't experienced that, because he's in a different movie that's a part of the bigger, he's in a different scene of the same grand reality, a grand movie. So every movie that's ever happened is happening simultaneously all at once, with these 7 billion different meat suits and these different reincarnations, incarnations, all these different spiritual beings living these spiritual lives through different perspectives. From my perspective right now, I'm here, I'm doing this thing, I'm perceiving this thing, it's my perceived, my perception, my reality. And then the cat down the road is a multi-million dollar like programmer, so he's tapped into a different source code. The cat down the road is working as a minimum wage worker at a fast food place. Another guy down the road is a homeless man, homeless woman, and they all live different perspectives because they're all living different movies, different scenes, different plays, whatever you want to call them. It's all just the same reality, but just different perceptions of that reality. Just because you haven't seen an extraterrestrial, or you haven't witnessed ghosts, doesn't mean the guy down the road doesn't investigate those things, doesn't see those things on a nightly basis. But because we're in a certain dimension, a three-dimensional reality, it's hard to capture those type of higher frequency beings and those higher dimensional beings on the physical matter in this reality. So when people say, oh, if there was such thing as this or that, then why don't we have video and this and that? It's like, because our videos are literally programmed, designed, and created to capture what we are in this dimension. So that's why you can see a picture. You shoot the light at something, it reflects the light back, you get an outline of the picture. That's because it's a three-dimensional being, a three-dimensional reality that it's taking. So if you're out there recording something that's from 11th dimension or higher, or if there's like a fifth dimensional like being in your room communicating with you, then those different dimensional beings won't be picked up on a three-dimensional technology. It's like if you're at one point in the middle of like making a meal, and then something outside explodes. You know, you heard that, you know it was out there, there is that perception, and you perceive that explosion. But because you're in this reality cooking a meal, then you would not know what that was. And until you perceive that from a different perceptive like reality, if you went and you researched it, or you went outside and you directly looked at it and you're like, oh, look at that, there's a volcano exploding, or there's a telephone line that exploded, or someone got in a car wreck. You don't know what that is until you change your perception of where you are in this reality to see what's going on. So just because it's not happening directly to you doesn't mean it's not happening. Until you tap into those different wavelengths, into those different frequencies, into those different realities, you don't know what's going on. You don't know what your neighbor's doing next door until you directly connect with your neighbor and go, hey, I heard a loud bang last night. What was it? And they go, oh yeah, sorry about that. Like, I dropped a big container outside and like it exploded or something. You don't know what really happened until you take that like perspective, and you take that information, you take that data that you just received, and you expand on it. You try to learn more about it. So something that's simple can be translated into something that's more like spiritual, that's connected to the spirit, like spirit. So the spirit can be connected to the physical. So if you have this experience where you perceive this grandiose like deity that comes to you and they communicate with you telepathically, it's hard to take that experience and be like, okay, was I hallucinating? Am I going crazy? What just happened? Did I really just encounter this deity? Did I really just encounter a god, or whatever you want to call them? Some have names, some don't have names, some communicate with you and they just let you know, like, oh, this is who you're talking to, even though they never say who they physically are in that spiritual realm. And whenever you tap into those different things, instead of dismissing it, that opens up something in your brain. That opens up new wavelength. That opens up new frequencies that are there. And so until you do the research here in this physical realm, you can't tap back in, or you can tap back into those spiritual realms, because once you tap in, you have that direct phone like line. You have that direct frequency to that being, to those deities, to those spirits, whether they're good, bad. Like, that's just a duality that happens here. There is no good, there is no bad. Like, whenever you say demons, angels, like, they all have their own purpose, they all have their own perspective, and they're all trying to do a certain thing. Whether you perceive them as good or bad, it's just how you perceive those things. A good experience for you could be a bad experience for someone else. Like, you getting a upper level management job at a fast food chain could be a great thing for you if you've never experienced that before, if you work as a cashier or something. But then someone from a tech company that loses their job and they have to take a upper management position at a fast food chain, that would be a bad thing. It's all about perspective, and that perspective can change drastically based on where you're at energetically. I know I'm rambling about a lot of stuff, and it's a lot to compress into such a short podcast. But the main thing that I'm trying to get at is the good, the bad, the duality of both things. Like, that doesn't exist once you open your mind, once you free your mind, and you realize that it's just perspective. And whenever you change your perspective, and then your whole perspective can change overnight through a single experience, through a mystical experience, something that's unexplainable in this realm of reality. So that's what a lot of people talk about when they take like DMT, dimethyltryptamines, like any type of like tryptamine, like tryptamines basically. Like, when it opens your mind up, when it activates your mind to the point where you leave your body, you have these out of body experiences. Like, if people talk about communicating with different type of entities and they have these crazy experiences, they come back, they barely remember them, they're trying to articulate what just happened, and it's hard to articulate what happened in a different dimension when you're in a higher dimension and you come back to a lower dimension, like a three-dimensional state that we're in this reality. So it's all about how you perceive those things. You can perceive it as, oh, I just had a crazy hallucinogenic like trip and I came back. Now my mind is back to a normal state. Or you can go, oh man, my mind isn't at a normal state until I enter into those realms, and then that's when my mind becomes in a normal state. And I can see these different beings, I can have these communications, I can literally talk to extraterrestrials, entities, like deities. Once you have those experiences and you try to bring them back, you can't bring them back because there's different levels to reality. Some people can bring them back. Those are what we call the shamans, and those are the people that look beyond the veil. They come back with the information because that is their energetic level. That's what they're here to do. And if you're not on that energetic level and you're doing this for self-healing, for shits and giggles, for fun, then information doesn't flow back to you like it would as if you were doing this for a mystical purpose, for a ceremonial, like a ceremonial or ceremony. I'm sorry, like a ceremony. Like if you're doing it like in a ceremonial setting, then those ceremonies will like activate different things when you have sound, light, fire. Like if you're using water to bathe yourself, like if you're using the elements, if you're using all these different things, then it activates different parts of your body, different sensations, different senses. You're activating everything. You're activating your whole vessel. You're allowing smell, taste, feeling. You're allowing sight. Like you're activating all these different things. Your brain is activating all these different things, and it can be an overload or it can be a transcendental experience that brings you up to a higher level. You receive information, you bring it back, and it can completely transform your life. So just because you haven't had the experience, or you've heard people talk about the experience and you think, oh man, that can't happen, and then you do end up having those experiences, then that's what changes your perspective. And you go, okay, my perception of reality has completely changed because now I can see that I went through this transformational state. At one point in time, I didn't believe this, but now I do because I've had this experience. I've communicated with people that's had this experience. I've talked to people that truly believe that their experience is real because in their reality, their perception is reality. So they've perceived these things, they've connected with these things, and they know that these things exist for them. It's because what's real to someone else can't be real to you, or it can be vice versa, where what's real to you can't be real to them, but until they have that experience, then it becomes real to them. So then now you're on the same wavelength, you're on the same reality, you're perceiving and you're connecting with the same perspective on reality. So reality is very, very like, you can switch from reality to reality just based on your thought process, how you think, how you perceive things. Like when you wake up in the morning, you can be in one reality, and when you go to sleep at night, you can be in a different reality. You are subtly changing timelines throughout the day, throughout the night, how you sleep at night, how you heal at night, how you enter into those different wavelengths, into those different deeper meditations throughout the night, how you feel your body, how you do all these different things. You are multi dimensional beings entering different dimensions throughout your day, throughout your night. Like every second of every day, you are traveling through different dimensions, different timelines, different realities. And until you start opening up your mind, until you start looking into it and tapping into it over and over again, then that reality isn't there until you connect with that reality. Then once you connect with that reality, you start connecting with people that are from that reality, from that timeline, from that life that you want to live. Until you change your mindset, you change the dial on that radio inside your mind, you change that frequency, you go up in frequency, you go down in frequency. It all just depends on you. It's from your perspective. It's what you're supposed to be doing in this life. With that, I'm going to go ahead and end this podcast. Thank you for listening. I know there's a lot of rambling, and if I said something that you guys want to pick up on and you want me to talk about a little bit more, if you want to communicate with me about it, if you have stories that you want to connect with me about, just hit me up, drop a comment, like hit me with a message, do whatever you need to do that communicates with me, because hey, I'm open for all lines of communication. Whether you want to try to dismiss something, whether you want to like create a just a conversation with me, if you want me to expand on something, if you want to just have a one-on-one and be like, hey, so I've had this experience, no one else in my life has had the experience, have you experienced anything like this? Like, because chances are if you're listening to this and you're connecting with this, then you've had experience that most people around you haven't had, and you want to find someone that's going to help you on your journey. And that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm looking for. That's why I'm here to help. Like, we're all here to help each other find our way home. And if I can help you do that, if you can help me do that, then that's our purpose in life. And so, with that, I'm going to say thank you for listening. And I really appreciate you guys. And until the next episode, peace and love. See you later, guys.